Okay, welcome. We're going to get started. Really excited to be here. It's just been an amazing experience. I've got a whole family contingent, and it's been incredible in connecting with all of you on this pilgrimage. Yesterday was an amazing experience. I'm sure we're all still glowing from that. And our panel is on photography, and we've got 3 presenters, myself included. So we're going to just jump right into it. No long introductions. I'm Jeffrey Yamaguchi. And I'm actually on the pilgrimage committee, so it's been great to work with that team and jam and just work to make all this happen so we can all be together like this. And I've got Aeko Yoshikawa, who is also on this panel. And Aeko said, let them read the description in the program, and that'll be enough. And so I just will keep it brief, and that's just Typo Master. And then we've got Gail Erwin, who is an archivist from the San Joaquin County Historical Society and Museum. I got it all right. That's a long one, but it's an incredible organization. So Gail, welcome. And we're going to be presenting about photography. And we each have, Aeko and I have similar experiences in that our fathers are both photographers. So there's a personal history to it. Then we have Gail, who is an archivist and kind of takes it from that professional perspective on how photography is such an important part of how we experience and learn and connect. And that's the way I think of photography. I think of it as a gateway. So we have these photos, they're also important to us. We want to know the stories of these photos. We're able to make connections through these photos, and there are mysteries in the photos, things we don't know, and it draws us in and makes us want to learn more. That's the kind of the perspective that I think about when I look at these photos, and when I present these photos, and when I discover new photos. So I'm just going to get right into it. This is just a very quick photo of myself. I don't want to be broadcasting me as a model or anything, but I did want to show how happy I am, because this is my wife and I were on a road trip 3 years ago. We stopped at Rohwer for the first time. So I'm 50 years old when I'm experiencing this. It's the first time I had ever been there. My grandfather, Fred Yamaguchi, my grandmother and their families were all in the camps. And I'd known that my entire life, but it just hit me harder actually being on the site. And when I was there, I'm beaming because that photograph there is my uncle Alan Hagio. And his granddaughter here is in the audience, Allison Hagio with her husband Mike, right here. She's seen this photograph before, but she had not seen it on the site. So she got to experience that yesterday. It was very meaningful. It was meaningful for me as well. And that is a photo that's in our family photo album. So that's how I knew about this photo. It's something that's been shared amongst the family. We believe that my grandfather took that photo. In the archives, it's actually credited to someone else. But just amazing to actually see the photo on the site. And it's used in other places as well. Seeing that photograph made me want to see more of the photos in our family photo album. And so this is one of the photos in that album. That's my grandfather in the middle. That's Yoshikawa on the left. And then 2 relatives, Uncle Aki and Uncle Haru. And I'm not sure who the person on the far right is. So that's one of the mysteries where I need to know more and do more research. But what struck me there is these young guys running a photo studio at the camp. So it's kind of like digging in even more into the history. What did this photo studio do? How did it work? I just needed to know more. And one of the things that you start doing online research, what was the Rohwer Photo Studio? Is it known? Is it something that's been written about? And not so much. It's not, there's not a lot of information about it. In fact, this photo, I think, is historically significant. Just the fact that it's one of the businesses that was run on the camp. And what I really like about this is that a lot of the photos that you may all have in your family photo albums may have been taken by this studio. So we're connected in that way. This is a photo from the yearbook. We were in the museum yesterday. This year, there was a yearbook there for all of us looking, and I could see people looking for their families and that. This is like a congratulations note from the photo staff to the graduates, and they took all those photos. And interestingly enough, in the far right corner that says Alan Haggio. He was a designer involved in printing and publishing. He designed that image. This is just another little cool thing of the family history where you just start looking harder and you discover interesting things.
That's my dad.
Whoa.
Discovery.
The bottom middle.
Wow.
All right. What's your dad's name? Oh, amazing. Okay, we're going to talk later. Wonderful. See what's happening? This is exactly what photographs can do, right? Now we're going to have a conversation and connect, and it's amazing. This is just some of the information I'm able to find in the Rohwer Outpost when I search for my grandfather's name. And when you look at these articles, they're just sharing kind of logistical information, like, hey, make your appointments. There's a shortage of film. We need a new photographer. It's just part of the history, but it's so fascinating to find. I wanted to know more. So again, set aside the photo of me, more just about some guy smiling, so happy. I'm in the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, and I'm able to see all the photos from the camps, including hundreds of photos taken by my grandfather that are in the archives. So this is another thing where family members were not fully aware of all the photos that were in there, and now we're discovering new photos taken by my grandfather. And anyone here can go visit the still picture room in College Park, Maryland. It's an amazing experience, and I recommend doing it. In the archives are photos like this. You see this, the studio underway, right? Or not underway. You know, see them at work, right? And they're clearly posing for these photos, having some fun. If anyone knows who the woman in this photo is, please let me know. That's Yoshikawa. But you can see some of the equipment. There are other photos where they're just at work, you know, printing, hard at work, making sure that people are getting their photos. And these include wedding photos and include family event photos. But also in the archive are photos that are quite serious. And what's happening here, and I know this because I'll show you the caption in a second, the people here in this are waving goodbye to people heading off to Tule Lake. Right? It's another photo of that as well. And so a very serious moment. And then the caption on this, you can see the credit to Fred Yamaguchi, that's my grandfather. And, you know, you can see that this is not the way we want this story told. This is not, this is a propaganda-oriented caption. There's just so much more to the story. And actually, Frank Abe, who is here and will be speaking, will be sharing a lot more information about this and the resistance that was happening, and a much more complicated story than just people thinking that their attachment was stronger to Japan. That's why they were being taken to Tule Lake. So this photo is leading me to the work that has to be done, and to discover the work that already has been done on this front, to keep telling the story, to get to the heart of the story. So just bringing it a little bit back more to the personal, I'll just show the power of photographs. This is our grandfather left us a note with a family tree and just information. And one of the things he had was June 4th, 1944. Very auspicious, right? That just happened. That means their anniversary was just a couple of days ago. And they had their wedding reception at Block 34 Mess Hall. So if I just had that, I would know that, and it would be wonderful to know when that was. But I have photos of this happening, where that reception was. I can see what the food is on the table. You see how beautiful everybody looked, including my grandmother. That's Maggie Haggio, now Maggie Yamaguchi. And this photo is as they were leaving the camp a week later. And this is a photographer at work, right? He's trying to capture something here. It's a pivotal moment in their lives. They've been in the camp, they're leaving the camp together as a married couple. Very intentionally having the sign in the photo, which is very striking. That's the train station. So at the corner of the camp that we were at, as we were driving into, that's where that train station was. And we didn't go there, but if you revisit the site, you can go to that area and you will actually see like an information panel about where the train track was. And that would be this place right here. Very significant. That's not his car. I know this because my Auntie Peg, Fred Yamaguchi's daughter, told me that. But see that suitcase there on the right? That's in my Auntie Peg's house right now. So again, like the power of photographs, I mean, you would have held on to that suitcase anyway, right? So very important. But we have a picture of it, like in this pivotal moment. The power of photographs. So it's like family history, but also more. It's a resonant, historical record. So that's my presentation. I've been doing a newsletter called Concentrational Resonance, where I'm sharing more of this and then just also information about all the amazing cool work, like Frank's book, who's going to be talking in this newsletter. So if you're interested, please think about subscribing. And this is probably I just want to say that Bob Yamaguchi, my dad, is here. Tom Yamaguchi is here. And Peg Hamada is here with Uncle Ken, Uncle Tom, and my mom here as well. We got my brother with his son, who's going to, the next generation. That's Jackson, my brother Scott. I already mentioned Allison and Mike. My cousins Brian and Stacy were also here. We got family here, so we're like more invested. I think part of that was the photographs and the visiting of the site, everything we're doing here. And I also wanted to mention that this is a photo of my grandfather. Again, if someone knows who the woman is in this photo, because you can see the caption is "Man with Camera and Woman." Someone had tagged this photo, Fred Yamaguchi, and that's how I was able to find it through an online search. The person who took this photo is Aeko Yoshikawa's father, Richard Yoshikawa. I contacted the archives. I said, tell me what's up with these photos, this archive. He said, oh, you want to talk to the daughter? And I said, I definitely do. We talked. That's why we're sitting here together. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
All right. All right, so how I learned about the Yoshikawa collection, anybody do a Google search? I did a Google search on my dad, and this picture came up, and it's actually of my Uncle Ed with his friends. And the photo said it was in the Yoshikawa collection at University of Pacific in Stockton. And I said, Yoshikawa collection? No one knew about a Yoshikawa collection. So I started investigating. So, oh yeah, I gotta do this. So, long story short, Grandma Yoshikawa died in 1987. So they're selling the house and they want to get rid of everything. So Bill Maxwell came to the garage sale and he bought several boxes of magazines. And later, when he got the boxes and started investigating what he bought, underneath the magazines were personal mementos, my Auntie Amy's school records, over 100 photos taken by my dad during World War II in war. Bill Maxwell saw the value. It was hidden. We didn't know it was in the boxes. So he sold the collection to UOP, hence the UOP collection. Since then, we've on purpose donated things to the Yoshikawa collection. So what I'm doing up here is I just wanted to give you a flavor of who the heck Richard and Helen Yoshikawa are, okay? So you know who they are. And so this is a photo. Dad's parents were barbers. So that's Dad's dad, Mizuki Yoshikawa. Dad's mom, Misao and Dad and Uncle Ed. So Dad was the oldest of 5 kids. Because of time constraints, I'm not going to talk about all of the other relatives. I'm really just going to focus on Dad. So my apologies. Okay, Dad went to Stockton schools, and then we're going to skip forward to when he was around 20 years old. And at that time, he went down to LA. He decided he wanted to become a photographer. So he went to art center school of photography in Los Angeles. And he was living with his uncle, Toshihiko's family, and worked in their produce down. And we're jumping forward again. So Dad said that he found out about Pearl Harbor probably at the produce stand and via radio with his uncle. And his uncle was really concerned, and rightly so, because restrictions were put on him, and he could not buy produce for the produce stand. So my dad did. But then when the restrictions then applied to the Nisei, it was decided that it was time for Dad to go home. So he went back to Stockton to help to get ready to go in the assembly center. So this is the Dorothea Lange photo in the Stockton Assembly Center. My twin uncles are in there, and my Auntie Amy, and Jim's dad's, Taguchi's dad's in here too. But yeah, they were at the Stockton, or the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds, and yes, they lived in horde stalls, so not very pleasant. This photo is also in Paul Kitagaki's book, Behind Barbed Wire. So after Stockton Assembly Center, they went to Rohwer, and while both in the Stockton Assembly Center and at Rohwer, Dad was an X-ray tech, and he did photography on the side. So that's Dad with the twins, and the twins are here. And I think later I'll get my family to stand up. But Dad didn't stay in Rohwer for very long. He secured a job at St. Vincent's Hospital as a X-ray tech. And then at night, he worked at Horseshoe nightclub. So the camera girls did the pictures, and Dad did the photo processing. So Grandma said to Dad, I'm thinking in a letter, you've got to come home and help us get resettled. So he went back to Stockton in 1945 and was greeted by we don't want any Japs here, and it was very hurtful. But Dad said that soon after the Japanese came back, the signs came down. So now I skip to the Takahashi side. So my mom is a Takahashi. We're guessing this picture was taken in 1937. She was in a farming family. Mom is the far right, and I'm thinking she's 13 years old in this photo. And her life would be helping out at the farm before and after school. The story about Mom finding out about Pearl Harbor, she was saying that she was bunching vegetables in the barn. And Uncle Shit came rushing in and told everybody about Pearl Harbor. And soon after that, then the Takahashis were in prison at Stockton Assembly Center. This is a photo we're thinking is taken around 1943. So after the Stockton Assembly Center, the Takahashis went to Rohwer, and Mom graduated from high school in Rohwer. And then when they left Rohwer in 1944, they went to Colorado and eventually went back to California to reclaim their farm. So both Mom and Dad are in Stockton, or French camp, and they meet in a church social and fall in love. My dad always used to say, he found his petunia in an onion patch. But they were married in 1947. And then they started Yoshikawa Studio, where they did portraits, commercial photography, and school work. Dad did all the photos and did the photo processing. Mom did customer service and she would color the photos. Back then, they didn't have color film, so you took a black and white photo, printed it in bronze tone, and Mom would add oil colors. So then I started a family, good-looking family. So around 1963-ish, Dad ran for Stockton Unified School District. 3 candidates, he came in last, but his name was out there in the community that he wanted to serve. So he was appointed to serve on the Delta Board of Trustees in 1964. He served on that board for 10 years, and then there was an opening on the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors. 8 people competed for that position. There was a big letter writing campaign, and Dad was appointed in 1974. So for both of those boards, he was the first Asian, first Japanese American to serve. Here he's being sworn in at the Board of Supervisors. One of the things I'm really happy to share is that he did testify at the commission when they're having hearings in San Francisco. In addition to testifying in support of redress, Dad encouraged the Board of Supervisors, San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors, to agree to pay reparations to San Joaquin County employees that lost their job. Dad was also instrumental in getting the Nippon Hospital made a historic landmark, and the Stockton Assembly Center made a California landmark. I'll throw this out. Dad signed the application for the Stockton Assembly Center to be a historic landmark, and Phil Merlot's grandfather was also a signer on that application. And you'll be seeing Phil next. So we talked about Dad's interests and his service. So I wanted just to share that Mom had her interests too. She was a songwriter. She was into music. She played guitar. She was into palmistry. She would read people's palms and things would just come to her. But reading your palm, you could tell how many relationships, how many kids. You look at the lifeline. So she was also a gambler. She had her favorite slot machines, and when they moved them, she'd find them. And she was loved horse races. And then don't ever sit next to her, because if her horse is coming in, you're going to get beat up. Okay. So anyway, they were both active in the Japanese American community and the Stockton community. Both families were involved in JACL, and we're gonna skip forward. So I did want to share with you that when in New York, so about being Japanese, when in New York, Dad's in a secluded street, it's dark, and he hears a voice, "Are you Japanese?" And he said right away, yes, but he was ready to run. So he never denied being Japanese, and it turned out the guy was friendly to Japanese. Another thing about Dad is he was into power naps, so it's good to take a 10-15 minute nap and be re-energized. And his advice to young people is always look for the sunny side and do the best that you can. Dad died in 2011. Mom died in 2012. In June of 22, I moved out of California and needed to find a place for all of their pictures and memorabilia. And Dad was instrumental in supporting the San Joaquin County Historical Museum. So we made a substantial donation to the museum. And Gail is going to follow me and talk about the Richard and Helen Yoshikawa collection. But before, I want my twin uncles to stand. They're survivors. And I want the rest of the Yoshikawa Takahashi group to stand up, because we've got a total of 24 of us here. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Gail.
Okay. You can. I have a soft voice, so if I start drawing away, just raise your hand or something. Do you have a few notes? Just keep me on track. Okay, so as Jeff and Aeko said, I am from the San Joaquin County Historical Museum, and I am the archivist there. And that's what I'm going to talk about. We call it the Richard and Helen Yoshikawa Collection, whereas the UOP is the Yoshikawa Family Collection, I think. And, okay, so I hope to answer 3 questions that you probably didn't know you had. And because one of my objectives here, I was thinking about it on the bus yesterday, it's also about how archivists can be a kind of a conduit of sorts for interaction and discovery between a collection like this one with a researcher. So I'm hoping to ease into that by talking about archives and how it relates to this collection and how it can be accessed for research. So first of all, what is an archive? And what does an archivist do? Well, first of all, what archives can be, they can be government records, they can be corporate records, they can be private manuscript collections, something like this. Though the distinctions do tend to blur. And what is in an archive or a collection? You can see just about anything. There are photographs, books, audio-visual, the old VHS tapes, audio tapes, and now DVDs and flash drives. The only thing I didn't put up there was maps, and that's one of my favorites. So how do you make order of it all? Because that is what an archivist does. Well, this is a picture of an actual collection that came to us because we are a repository for our county records, and there were like 5 pallets that came like this. They're from the tax assessor. So I had some help from our docents organizing them, but we're still working on that one. This kind of demonstrates a circular process of being an archivist, but I'm not going to talk about all those little steps along the way that are on the outside, and there are a few other considerations like collections policy and that sort of thing. This is the simple version. First, you identify if a collection is important, how it's important, basically. They're all important to me, but how it's important, should it be part of our archives? Then you preserve it, and then you make it available. You can make it available by finding aids and digitization and outreach like this. But I always feel the point is to make sure that people know it's there and are able to come in and do research on it. So how does it relate to the Yoshikawa collection? And why should we preserve it? And I had a long thing about that. I should probably read it a little bit. First of all, it does include how they coped during World War II, Richard's time as an elected county official, and their involvement in JACL and other community groups. And also part of our museum's mission statement is that we will preserve the diverse histories of our county And this collection, of course, does represent one of them. So this is what the collection looks like in boxes. The archival part of it, there are artifacts, including about 4 gavels. So that was always interesting that was very interesting when it came in. And you can see the list on the side. It contains just about all those things, even a map. And there are 2 boxes missing. They're up in Sacramento, waiting to be digitized. So history, to me, is stories. And it's 1 + 1 + 1 story. And that's how we all make history. All of us are making history right now. We're passing through it as we stand today. And of course, that includes Richard and Helen. All right, so now we get to the photos. Fun part. So this is part of Richard's album that he created when he was at Rohwer. That's mainly what I'm going to talk about today. And I think he might have had somebody working with him, because unless Aeko knows otherwise, I don't know if he was a painter. No, so there was probably somebody else helping him with this. Or I don't know, you call it helping, but just, they had a wry sense of humor in it. So this slide shows something from Richard's album on the left-hand side, saying our only contact with the outside world, which was the post office. And then on the other side are photos from Helen's album. And it shows the different ways that they approached their keeping record of this. He was more into a documentary sort of a way of doing it, and she was more sociable, I guess. She wanted to keep track of her friends that she met there. This is a category out of Richard's album, The Hospital. And I put just a few notes on the side, that it did have a capacity of about 175 beds, which I checked is kind of comparable to today in our hospitals, for about 8,000 people. I don't know what the conditions were totally, but anyway. And so he had a picture of the surgery. I'm gonna let you read that for a minute. Again, he may have had a buddy that was, they were thinking up some things to put for the captions. There's the pharmacy. Again, the optometrist department and dentistry. And then there's an x-ray department. And can anyone guess who the technician is? I sat down with some of the family members looking at the photos at one point, and they said, this is Richard. Which, I hope I have time to say this, but I was reading about how people who even sneaked cameras into the camps were able to develop them. Well, they could go to the x-ray department after hours and use the chemicals there, from what I understand. And this is the educational department of his book. Yesterday at the, I'm just throwing this in because yesterday at the museum in Rohwer, in McGee rather, they talked about when they were building the barracks, the special barracks for the schools. It would be the high school and then the elementary and junior high. And they didn't have desks at first. So on the left-hand side, you can see this is a younger group, and they seem to be sitting on the floor. On the right-hand side, they've got desks. They're a little bit older children, so this is later on. And then we go back to, well, I think that's a high school class. They've got chairs at least, but no desks. And you can see the barracks through the window. That's one thing about photographs. If you really study them, you can see a lot of interesting things. And again, that bottom photo, that was from one of Helen's albums. And it was what they had to deal with, at least early on when it rained. They had to go through the mud and change classes, which was like regular high school. And eventually they got plank walkways, I believe. And then this was Flag Day, a chance to showcase the school orchestra, which you can see in the middle photograph there, and also probably to show their patriotism. Okay, and he had some photos on basketball, but not the other sports. Maybe he just wasn't there long enough, or maybe he just liked basketball. And Odori with the typo drummer. And then these again were, they both took pictures of family and friends. And there are the twins again. Where are you? These are a few other photos that weren't in the albums, but it shows the variety of photos that are there. I haven't even gotten to all of the family photos yet. I've looked at them, but not categorized them really well yet. It was the Stockton Yamato's baseball team from 1938, the Northern California Japanese Students Clubs Federation, 1940, and there are some other photos of that federation online, but I didn't see any from 1940. And then the Stockton Buddhist Church, pre-1941, and my understanding is that photos of it are a little bit rare, so this is a good one to have. And finally, this is a picture of an honorary commencement ceremony in 2009. And Helen, this was in Stockton, Helen is right there in the center in the front row. So the last question is, how can the collection be accessed for research? Well, right now, as I said, there are two oversized boxes with the albums up in Sacramento at California Revealed. And California Revealed is a kind of a grant program through the California State Library. And they are able to digitize and put online items like this. I mean, they have all kinds of things, actually. And we actually have some oral histories that you can listen to. If anybody wanted to contact me for more information about this particular collection or anything else that we might have, I do have business cards with me. And then I just threw up a few more, the good research sites, and probably most of you know about Densho, which is just, I haven't explored it as much as I want to. Any question you have, you can almost get answered there. And then there's the Online Archive of California. It's a very good searchable site. You get access to finding aids for collections from many institutions. I don't have the finding aid up yet for our Yoshikawa collection, ours. Thank you to the family so much for that. But you can access the one from UOP, and they have photos digitized. And then Internet Archive is just kind of a fun thing. So finally, I think I'm within time. Gee, I haven't gotten the word down there. I really appreciate you all being here, and I really appreciate that you are remembering history. You're remembering your heritage because you're preserving it. Being on that tour yesterday really affected me a lot because it made the whole, this collection in particular, it's before, it can seem, it's never quite that way with me because they always seem to be alive, but it can be sort of inanimate and flat like a piece of paper. Well, being on the tour and also hearing your recollections about your families, it made it just more rounded, more full. I don't know if that makes sense, but it really affected me. And I always like to experience that about any of the records that I have the care of, which is what I see. And I would really like to be sure that you reach out to any archivist. If you go online and you see something is at a particular institution that you might like to see, reach out to them, or to research librarians of libraries. They really want to be helpful because that's one of the objectives. So and one more thing, that was just a sampling of photos. I have more on my laptop if anybody would like to see more while this is still going on. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail and Aeko. That was amazing. And I've got my wife here who was keeping time. She did not have to rush the stage and tackle me. She was not able to tackle Gail and Aeko, but that she was tasked with that. And just want to say, this is a great way to end it. We want to open it up to questions. One of the things is just being involved in this, looking at these photos. I told my parents, my mom here at Norma, I was like, you gotta organize all our photos. I don't know who all these people are. So it's just it's very inspiring. And she did it. She is literally organized all our family photos, which is a massive gift, right? It's so important. You can see what happens down the line. So we're gonna run mics if anyone has questions, and yes.
Hi, I just wanted to make some observations. My uncle was a military photographer who eventually ended up on General MacArthur's staff. He said that at the beginning of the war, when the Japanese were interned, they couldn't bring cameras in. It's all contraband. They were searched. So there are very few pictures of that period. He said the military photographers, on the other hand, were told to take pictures that showed the internment as being sort of a joyous occasion and to avoid any signs of military people with rifles, also with barbed wire. Okay, what happened was that later on, when you were able to buy things through mail order, Sears Roebuck, Montgomery Awards, then that's the period of time which you showed better, more personalized pictures. Okay, so when you're looking at all the pictures in time frame context, you have to keep that in context and understand that it wasn't quite a joyous time as the earlier pictures portrayed.
I have a short question about the cameras.
Go ahead.
I have a short question about the cameras. How do they get those big cameras? At the photography club?
So for the studio, that is a great question, and that's part of the research right now. So yeah, for sure.
So my dad had a friend, George Lark, and when he needed things, he'd ask George to send them to the camp and he'd get them. And then as far as the camera, he just never gave up his camera. He just kept it. Yeah, he wasn't going to give up his camera until someone forced him to take it away, and so he was able to keep it.
The big 4x5, the big bellows, the big cameras. Did he keep those?
I think what Dad said, he had a speed graphic. Do you guys remember what the size? I think speed graphic maybe is like a smaller camera. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I know Toyo Miyatake from Los Angeles, and discussing some of his photographs is that his grandfather, smuggled in just the lens and built the box with the wood that was provided for other things. That's the way he was able to take a lot of the photographs. I don't know how he got the films, into the camp, but he showed the X-ray technician had all the chemicals to develop it, so I know that was done.
Okay, I didn't live during the time, but I thought they were still able somehow to get Search Roebuck stuff and order it and get it in the camp. I don't know, does anybody know?
I think he was in Manzanar.
Manzanar, I think, is where, oh, wow.
Yeah, towards the end of the war, you were able to get anything in that you wanted. So you can get huge wall fans that were 4 feet by 4 feet by, 2 or 3 feet.
It is true at the very, this is all very helpful because at the very beginning, cameras were contraband. And when you weren't allowed to have cameras, so there was a lot of ingenuity, and whether it was having a guard help you or someone smuggle in the necessary equipment, or like your father just sort of finding a way to have it come in. And then as things progressed, it definitely became more, you could have a camera, you could have a photo studio. And it is interesting to look at the photos where celebrations are happening. And there is a lot of talk about the idea that why do people look happy in these photos? And it's not necessarily the message that is what was really going on. And I think it's part of the balance of having to have the perspective of like, yes, that is true. And at the same time, there were joyous occasions, and the natural inclination, just like it is today, like we were at the site yesterday and we're all taking pictures of our families together. I think that was also happening. So there's a balance, and you have to have that perspective when you're looking at all these photos. I'm showing those photos of the wedding reception right towards the end. It's a very joyful occasion. It's very real. But there's the other side of the story that there aren't the photographs of, or fewer photographs. So it's just that perspective we always have. It's a very good point.
Yeah, another thing to keep in mind is in those days, cameras were lenses and boxes. They weren't quite as sophisticated as they are today. So people smuggled in parts. And at that time, the soldiers really couldn't identify the parts.
I have a question about, were cameras officially sanctioned, or did they stop enforcing the allowing of cameras, and how did that come about? Did they petition to allow it, or how did it from being contraband to not being noticed or not being enforced?
That's a great question. The very interesting thing to me is that photo studio, which you saw, was fully equipped. So part of the research now is to go into some of that paperwork to look at some of the material where it was approved. One thing to keep in mind with the photo studio and the captions that are on the photos in the National Archives, it was regulated, it was censored. There were photos that were destroyed or not allowed to be processed. So there was a real process, and my cousin Brian, who has been wonderful about capturing a lot of our family history and really paying attention to these things for many years, he had conversations with my grandfather where he would say that the white photographer took credit for the photos they were taking. So like the government officials, there's this oral history that you need to sort of like get the real facts on to be able to specifically answer that question. And there are some good materials out there, but more research has to be done. And how much time do we have? Probably just a couple more minutes. 5 minutes? Okay.
Hi, everybody. Ooh, I'm always loud, and a microphone is even worse. So I'm Heather Registers of Indian. I'm with the Central Arkansas Library System. We're the folks who have Rosalie Gould's collection in the building next door. So I just wanted to mention that a lot of libraries around the country are doing memory labs. We actually just hired Meredith, who's sitting next to me, to be our memory lab coordinator here. These are services usually free from your library system that you can go in and digitize your own collections, your own family photos and documents. VHS, beta, reel to reel in some cases. And I want to encourage, your mom, the fact that your mom has already done all of that is awesome. So I encourage everybody to do that to your own collections and then donate the originals to an archive so that it can be preserved forever. And Gail, I have a quick question for you. Reparative language, how are y'all dealing with reparative language in the archive around Japanese American incarceration?
Good question. I think our next speaker might be more able to answer that. That would be our executive director from the museum. And he will be on next. Would that be good? Because he is, he's very well read. I don't know if that helped. And by reparative language, do you mean not to say evacuees? Yeah. Mm. I wondered about that too, because when I came, I was thinking, how do I present this up on, I was kind of careful about what I said, but my feeling is to say what they were basically is, I guess there's a definition of internees were more people who were Issei, right? Issei. And because they were prisoners. And yet, everyone was prisoner that went to those camps, actually. So they were all incarcerated. And that's what we are beginning to change in our museum, but not all museums are, but we're in a very conservative area. But gradually, we're trying to bring it more into the 21st century and just really address all the diverse histories that we have in our county. We have a lot of diverse communities, and we want to include them. Does that make sense? Good.
I think it shows how the photos that were taken all those years ago, it evolves over time with these kinds of programs and just our own research and the learning that's happening. So the pictures evolve and our understanding of them evolve. So thank you for sharing that about the archive and the work that's being done there. Thank you, Aeko and Gail, and thank you all of you for the great questions and for listening, and we carry on. Thank you.